Have you ever heard the phrase, Chelle, laissez les bon temps rouler?
No. Should I have? What's that mean? I'm frightened. I feel like it's voodoo.
Laissez les bon temps rouler means let the good times roll. And it's a saying that's very popular in New Orleans, particularly around Mardi Gras.
Laissez les bon temps rouler. If I can spit that out, you're all good.
Let the good times roll.
We're going to have to talk in a few minutes about beads and boobies because I need to figure that out too. I know all of our listeners want to hear about beads and boobies just as much as ghosts,
Who doesn't love beads and boobies?
right? It's witchcraft.
Hey, it's 4:20 a.m. Hi, and welcome to episode 57 of the Stoned Witches Hour. If you're looking for a podcast with ghostly stories, evildoers from history, and mysteries from beyond the grave, mixed with some witchy good vibes and a metric ton of super chronic hydroponic crystal-coated ganja, then you're in the right place. With the spookiest cemetery stories and the stickiest of buds, I'm Layla.
I'm Chelle, and I'm impressed with that intro. I wish you all could see Chelle's impressed face because I'm super impressed with that right now.
Well, this is my super high face, so maybe that's how I got through that tongue twister of an intro.
I don't mean to jump right in, but I am so excited today to talk about weed.
I'm excited for the whole episode
So
today, not
I
only about the
am
weed we're smoking, but
Mardi Gras,
where
New
we're
Orleans, everything.
Yes, laissez les bon temps rouler.
Let the good times roll.
So let's get rolling with this episode. What the fuck are you smoking?
Speaking of rolling, so I went to a different store. I was in a
You
pinch.
cheated on Happy Valley?
Well,
Shell.
I
I'm
had some
shocked.
problems. I had some problems this week that involved, for any of you listeners from the New England area, my issues this week involved the Massachusetts State Police in the RMV.
What? Shell, are you a fugitive from the law?
I was apparently because we're not going to slam Geico. We love Geico. We love their little Geico, then their little Geico commercial. But they didn't tell the RMV about my insurance change, and I had to have some conversations with the state troopers.
Oh no.
That got me off course, and I didn't make it to Happy Valley that day. I ended up at a different store and I saw something that I've never seen before,
This almost like sounds like Dorothy in Cannabis Valley or something.
right? The house falls on the witch, and
Hey,
and I open up to a different store. Some of these stores have like this is going to sound funny, but like a 50% off bin.
I love me a good sale. A 50% off bin, I would be right there.
So, I'm going to still get some regular good old goody goodies, but I'm also eyeing that 50% off
Well,
bin,
yeah, the 50% off bin gives you the extra cheddar to get the goody goody.
right? So, this little bad boy, actually, folks, this is Instagram worthy. So, this will be going up in a day or so. I got me
Whoa. Oh, wow.
it's a pre roll, but this thing is an eighth.
I wish you could see me right now. Shell, in her video, is holding up a joint that is bigger than her freaking head.
No, this isn't a joint.
It's a cone pre-roll and it's very, very large.
I wouldn't even call this a joint. I'd call this like a cigar.
That's big.
They sell it in a cigar tube.
That looks like a wake and bake of epic proportions to me.
Well, the funnier part is, so I almost called it the breed. You want to know the breed of my weed? It is. It's called Sunday Driver.
Oh, I've heard of that.
I am going to have to go on a Sunday drive just to smoke this whole damn thing.
Question. Is it spelled Sunday, Sundae? Because that's how I've seen it most often. Sunday driver.
Let's see here. Give me a second to read the fine print here. Oh, I didn't even know this. Yeah, like a sundae, like an ice cream cone.
Yeah.
Sundae.
Yep. That's what I've noticed most times. That particular cultivar is spelled like a sundae, like an ice cream sundae. Even though the phrase is Sunday driver,
It says Sunday driver, and then it's got H in parentheses, bat, 3.5 grams. So it's a Sunday driver bat because, the thing is as big as a baseball bat.
Nice. Nice. It is a 1/8 cone pre-roll. That is beautiful.
And
Beautiful.
what's even more beautiful?
What's that?
I'm going to be smoking it by myself.
Wow, Shell.
But I will say this is definitely a party roll.
Well, I'd say that's a you and me and a one night of good conversation roll.
But the thing is that it was $25. So
Hey, not bad.
essentially you're getting an eighth for $25. And I'm down with that.
I am too.
I got two other really good things as well. I got another 50% off. This was 30 for an eighth, but in a regular container. This Snow Dog.
Interesting. I have never heard of Snow Dog before.
But here's one. I haven't opened this one yet. I'm going to be partaking in this one later today. This was how you get out of the 50% off bin and then you get a tin of good.
Mm-hmm.
So this was my tin of good. It's called 413 Raspberry Badino.
Okay, also never heard of that.
But with raspberry, it's spelled with Z's. So it's Razzberry. So it's
That's pretty typical of a cultivar name.
But I want to know what you're smoking. And then I know last episode we talked about talking about this. And we're going to talk about this. So I want to hear what you're smoking. And then I want to talk a little briefly about reading labels.
Ooh, yes, yes. I am smoking some Gelato 42.
Ooh, you love your gelato. What's 42? Is that the meaning of life?
42 is the meaning of life, the universe, and everything, as told in The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. So Gelato 42 is the gelato that is the be-all and end-all, I'm guessing. It's pretty good. It's not as fabulous as some other cultivars of gelato that I've had before. I believe there are other numbers of gelato. So there's like a Gelato 31, a Gelato 45. So this must just be the number 42 of this particular cultivar that someone...
It reminds me of that weed I got that was numbered that I had to vote on.
Yeah, exactly. It's more than likely something like the grandpa cookies that you voted on.
Right, that's what it was, grandpa cookies.
Yep. So this particular gelato is anywhere between 17 to 27% THC.
That's quite a range.
It is quite a range. And again, that's really going to depend on the genetics of what you get. And just because it's called Gelato 42 here doesn't mean that it's going to be exactly the same as the Gelato 42 that you get somewhere else. We're still in the wild west of cultivars right now, which is why Chelle is going to talk about, going to talk about the labeling, because the cannabis I'm smoking right now has no labeling. It's technically not black market, but more like gray market weed. It's a little bit on the side. It's from another grower. It's someone that I know and trust well. So it's not illegal, but I guess we technically can't anyway. We're not going there. But anyway, so this was from someone else. So it doesn't have all the testing that something that you would get from a dispensary will have. So even though the name might be Gelato 42, I don't know exactly what I'm getting in this particular bud until it's been tested and labeled, like what Chelle has right there.
But is it a good smoke though?
It is. It's very tasty. It has some light purpley, like most gelato cultivars will have. There'll be some purple in that coloration. And I believe that's from its parentage, some of that indica heavy parentage. But it also has a very sweet taste. And it's a very up, heady high. I feel it first in my eyes, and then I start to feel very smiley, very chatty. So it's one of my favorite cultivars for that reason. It's usually very tasty, no matter what variety of gelato I get. And regardless of whether it's a lower end THC or higher, the different terpenes and blend that I get with it gives me a nice, consistently good buzz every time.
So far today, I've been smoking this Snow Dog. That was the one I got.
I love that name. That's such a creative name.
I can't say that I'm blown away. I mean, weed is weed is weed is weed. I'm not going to deny anything.
Sure.
But
this one's not particularly impressive.
I am not blown away. Like almost to the point where I don't even want to discuss it. I'm so underwhelmed. But I mean, it's weed. You're getting a buzz. You're getting okay. But I can't say this is like, oh my God, let me spend 20 minutes talking about Snow Dog because that ain't going to happen. But
Yeah, that's like Chelle's worst thing. She's like, yeah, I don't want to talk about it anymore.
It's just not even that great.
It's just weed.
I just want people to know at least I'm honest. But like honestly, the stuff I had from a friend of a friend of a friend last week was probably the same as this store-bought snow dog.
Gotcha.
But I want to get into some of these labels for a second because this can be confusing. Like for someone like Layla, she knows all this shit. And she just, oh, let me read a label. Okay, I know what that means. And then you get Chelle, who's like, I don't fucking know. Just give me something good that's going to give me high.
There you go. All right, what have we got here?
We're going to start with this snow dog just because it's got bigger print and I can read it. First of all, you got people smoking weed. We're stoners, okay? So you're going to put this in micro print. Who is reading this? The elf with the big magnifying glass? Like who?
I think they just count on people to not read it, to be
I
honest.
really think they do. So, first of all, THCA. When someone says, "What's my THC content?" Okay, is that the A? Because I got another one that says it has a triangle and a 9 and then a dash THC. What's the difference? Which one's the THC?
Okay, they're both the THC, different forms of THC. So THC doesn't start out exactly as THC. So THCA is the acid form. It's tetrahydrocannabinic acid. And so that's basically the precursor of THC. When you get most buds or any type of product that's made from it, like your butter or your shatter or your diamonds, what have you, usually that is something that has come from a plant that has been dried and cured or has been processed in some way. And that process usually involves a little bit of heat. Drying a plant or using heat creates a process called decarboxylation. And what that does is it takes one carbon molecule away from the THC and it turns that from the THCA and turns that into THC. The THC is what can get you high. That's the actual psychoactive part of the plant. The THCA does not react in your body the same way. Delta 9 is like the most abundant form of THC. It's another type of tetrahydrocannabidiol. Delta 9 is the most abundant form of it in the plant. There's also Delta 8 and Delta 10, which are other forms. And that's why you'll see that triangle. The triangle stands for Delta. And sometimes you'll see sometimes you'll see the number on the inside of that triangle to mean like Delta 9, Delta 8, Delta 10. And that'll tell you what those different types of cannabis. So Delta 9, again, if you eat it, you can feel high. And if you smoke it, you will also feel high. So it's the more activated form of THC as opposed to THCA, which is not yet activated.
What activates THCA?
Heat, actually.
Oh.
So if you dry a plant, a little bit of heat action happens there as you dry and cure a plant, and that activates some of the acids, which then are fully acted when you light your bowl.
I gotcha.
If you eat a dried flower, you'll get a little bit high because only a little bit of that THCA has been activated into a Delta 9 THC.
So with this snow dog, it says THCA 24.04. Delta 9 THC is 1.7. So if I were to eat this, I'd really probably only be getting the 1.7.
That's correct, because that's the only activated currently portion of that cannabis, most likely from the drying process. Once you hit a lighter to it or put it through a heat press, or if you decarb it, what's commonly called decarbing, by breaking it up and putting it on like a tray and putting it into a very low oven or microwave, or
then I'll get that 24%.
That's correct. Then that low heat will activate the acid and turn that THCA into your Delta 9 THC. And then it's activated and your body can process it either by eating it or smoking it.
The thing also is that different brands, different stores, everybody labels things different and in a different way. Because this snow dog, this is by Berkshire Roots Signature, probably a weed store out in the Berkshires that make their own. But they've got CBDA, CBD, CBN, CBG, TAC, TC. They've got camphene,
Okay, slow down.
terpenoline, linalool. I can't even tell you all this stuff on here, and I don't know what any of this means.
Okay, let's break some of that down. This is going to be a much longer episode. If we break all of it down, it's going to be super long. But anything with the enes, the linalool, the camphene that you mentioned at the end,
Camphene, terpenoline, linalool, garnolol.
those are all what's called terpenes. Those are what give the flavor and some of the active effects to the cannabis plant. The CBG and the CBN and the
CBD.
those are all other active compounds of the plant. The CBDs, everyone has kind of heard of because you can have that quote unquote legally. It comes from the hemp plant. It's separate from THC. It's yet another active compound in the cannabis plant that's good for you. It's very highly anti-inflammatory. So it helps a great deal with any pain that's associated with inflammation. And so people will take that specifically for headaches, for stress and anxiety, which can cause inflammation in the body, for aches and pains. I take it when I have fibroid inflammation. It's absolutely amazing for pain reduction. So sometimes people will want more of that in their cannabis because they're smoking for different reasons. The same thing with the terpenes. Not only will they give a different flavor, like you might want to look for ones
Well,
that
this
have
has something in it called limonene.
limonene. So you would want
Limonene.
to look for things that have limonene because you really like that lemon flavor of like the super lemon haze. It's very high in limonene. Linalool is good for people who need anti-inflammatory and sleep, I believe, but different terpenes can have different effects as well as different flavors. The same thing goes for the other ingredients. If you want something that's for more for pain management and you really don't want to get very high, you can actually get a higher THC content cannabis as long as it has an equally high CBD ratio, because the CBDs will counteract the high effect of the THC. So even if you have a very high THC cannabis, if it has also a high CBD, you won't feel as high, but you will still get the therapeutic effects of the THC and the CBDs in that plant.
Now, let me ask you this. Is this TAC, is that the THCA and the THC9 combined?
Kind of. Basically, what that is, it just means TAC, which is total active cannabinoids. So that means the full amount of the
The total of THC.
total. Everything that's going to give you some type of psychoactive THC response in whatever form it's in, they're going to add that up under TAC.
If you're going to dumb this down to shell terms, basically, when I'm looking at a label, all I really need to care about is TAC.
No. No, Shell does want TAC, but you also want to look at CBDs. If you're going to be using it for back pain, you want a higher CBD.
Gotcha.
If you're just smoking it to be couch locked, look for lower CBD and
Gotcha,
higher
yeah.
THC. If you want some of those good flavors, you're going to want to look for the limonene for that nice up flavor. If you like the pine taste, you're going to look for the pinenes. Linalool is more of the lavender, the floral tastes.
Right.
And there's tons of them. We can't go over all of them here. But if you can look and find what the different flavors and effects are that you like, and then you can start to go for them.
I got one more question about labels, and then we can go back to our ghost stories. I got this container, Right Coast Revolution from INSA. On their label, they stick to the TAC, THC, the CBD stuff. But down at the bottom, total terpenes. So for this raspberry budino, they've got total terpenes 2.21. What does that mean to me? Because I know you talk about terpenes all the time.
Terpenes, again, are the linalool and the limonene and the pinene that we were just talking about. Those are more flavors, but they also contribute in some way to the entourage effect of all these different things, all these different chemicals in the plant work together to help benefit you in a myriad different ways. And so not only do these different terpenes give you flavor and taste, they also give you benefits. Like we were saying, some of them will give you a little bit more of an up high, and some of them will give you a little bit more of a mellow, relaxed, or sleepy high. So if you're looking for cannabis to work for depression or to work for pain or Crohn's disease, whatever you're using it for, there's a different entourage of ingredients that's going to be best for you. And you'll need to probably do a lot of internet research or talk to your bud tender, talk to your doctor. Hopefully they're knowledgeable, but there is a whole entourage of effects. And so the terpene content will just mean how flavorful it is and which terpenes will give you different effects and different flavors.
Can you just talk real quick about the inconsistencies of labeling in your opinion on that? Because I got 3 different products here with 3 different types of labels that give 3 different types of information. Like, is there any consistency coming down the pike, or are we just winging
Not
it?
yet. Not yet. Right now, we are still at the mercy of the wild, wild west. And that is true everywhere, from old legalization states like California to new ones, relatively, like Massachusetts, New York, and everything in between. Unfortunately, every single testing facility will have different things they test for. There is no regulation right now. Basically, they just need to know THC content and CBD. I'd have
Right.
to look that up. So anything else is really just at the discretion of the grower and whether their particular lab that does their testing provides it. I think it is important. We should start to get to know what these are, because you and I used to rely on the name of something to know its
Right.
parentage. But I don't know what the fuck a snow dog is. I don't know what that means.
But if you come at me with White Widow, you're speaking my language.
Right. But nowadays, with everybody and their brother and sister backyard growing,
Right.
it could be called a white widow and it might have no genetic relationship at all to white widows that
But
we've
what we
smoked.
know is White Widow, yeah.
Exactly. Regulation has its pros and cons, and I do think some testing is good, because it is good to know what's going to work for you if you're trying to smoke it for some type of issue. And also, Chelle, like we've talked in the past, you've smoked very low THC cannabis that gave you an amazing kick you in the face high, and you've smoked high THC cannabis that was kind of meh.
Eh.
Exactly. And the reason is because of the other chemicals that are in that bud that have an entourage effect with the THC content. And so you'll get different effects. And so you might want to look for that. And for that reason, I like the testing. But until we get some type of regulation and some type of uniformity, you're just going to kind of have to guess.
So pretty much at the moment, I just want to know the THC content that's going to get me high, some CBD content to make my back feel better, and the rest, I don't know what it means, so I don't care.
For now, if you're lucky, ask your bud tender, hey, what's going to get me the most high? Or what's going to make me forget that my back hurts like a bitch?
Well, and I've done
hopefully
that.
they can help you.
Yeah, no, actually, they're pretty good around here about that. Most bud tenders are relatively knowledgeable, and they'll, hey, what are you looking for today? What can we do for you? And I'll be like, look, my back hurts and I got some shit to do, but I want to be high and I want to be able to do my shit and not have my back hurt, but I need to function. And they'll be like, oh, we got something for you. And I'm like, all right.
Yep. Talk to your bud tender. Talk to somebody else who's smoked it. Listen to us. We've talked about a lot of different things.
Well, I appreciate you kind of disseminating some of this stuff for me, because I just look at it and I'm like, I don't know.
Sure. Anytime. You know, I love to talk about weed.
For all of our listeners out there, if you've got label questions, email us at thestonedwitcheshour@gmail.com. And I probably don't know the answer, but Layla might.
Direct them all to attention Layla, and I will happily help you out. If you want Chelle's opinion, we'll get that too. But it'll be more whether don't smoke that shit or yeah, smoke that shit.
Yeah, man.
Okay, I have actually, before we get too much further, I do have one more order of business.
I just can't believe this pre-roll.
That pre-roll's amazing. So while you spark up that pre-roll, I'm going to bring up some bad news about our podcast.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun. So we've had a couple people email us, and one listener in particular. Now, she gave us her full name, and I'm not going to say it. I'm just going to say what she signed off with. She should know who she is. So Sparkles Witch emailed us, and she not only has a story, but a criticism.
Oh, it happens and it's okay. And I don't even know what you're going to say. And I'm just going to say, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay.
It is. We can't be right all the time. It happens. This time, thankfully, it wasn't me. Ha
I
ha.
was going to say it was me, wasn't it?
So Sparkles Witch wrote in and said, I was listening to your most recent episode and I was so excited that you covered one of my favorite haunts, Ashmore Estates. And then she goes on to say, I am sorry, but I did want to correct that Ashmore Estates is actually about 3 hours south of Chicago. So I guess we said it was an hour.
Well, I look at maps so much that I feel like when I look at a map that an inch is like a half hour. And I looked at the map and it looked like it was only like an inch.
I know. Chelle, you're just terrible. Do you feel suitably chastened?
I'm sorry. My geography's been off a little bit.
She says it is about an hour from Champaign, however, so maybe we got confused there.
I don't know where that is either.
I don't either.
But you know what, Sparkle Witch? I think you should invite us out to your house and hang out with you so you can show us how far away it is.
Oh, that would be awesome. She loves our podcast. She loves learning about cryptids, my queen cryptid. And she also adores orbs, so she loves us both, I'm sure. And she's a fellow witch who enjoys all things paranormal and cannabis. So she's our people.
She is our people, and she is going to end up being our geography person because obviously I'm not good at it.
Now, I'm going to tell you quickly her story from Ashmore Estates because she had a spooky experience.
Oh my God. So she has a story from where we did a story?
She does.
Read this. I got to hear this. I'm excited.
Okay. She says she had an experience one night while driving past there. She says she was on her way back to Charleston and she thought she saw someone looking through a window on the top floor of Ashmore Estate.
I hope she slammed on the brakes right then and there.
She says her spookiest experience, however, was she went on an overnight flashlight tour there with a group of friends.
Jealous!
Now, she says it was one of the coldest nights of the year on a full moon. And they agreed they were going to be 100% sober, no smoking, no drinking or anything. And no one was to talk about what they experienced until the very end.
I like that. We should do that sometime.
We should.
No one speak a word until we're done. Oh, I like that.
She said that as soon as she stepped on the property, she could feel the energy in the place.
That's kind of like that witchiness about her, where she just knows that she's in some spooktacular location.
Exactly. Sensitives seem to be drawn to witchcraft, and we can definitely feel when a place has some type of energy going on.
Right,
and she felt it there for sure.
Kudos to her for feeling it and keeping on going.
Right? So that goes to your question as to whether the haunts and the energy is still there, because this sounds like it was fairly recent.
And it sounds like, I want to go. I'm jealous.
Yeah. So she says they all crammed into the entrance where the staircases are, and she was kind of tucked back into a corner while the guide told the story of the building. And she had done a bunch of research, so she was only kind of half paying attention and looking up and down the hallways. She says she was snacking on some Smarties, which totally sounds like you. We'd be on a tour somewhere and Chelle would be pulling food out of her jacket, out of places you don't even know. She's got
Anybody
snacks.
want some M&Ms?
Exactly. So just like you, she's snacking on some Smarties when she saw several shadow figures staring out from the corners of the lower level. Again, not surprised that she's sensitive to that kind of thing.
Right.
Now, she looked up the stairs and she said the whole stairs and the upper floor were covered. She said lots more shadow people. And she says she didn't know how to describe it, but she felt curious energy from the spirits.
I feel like the way she's starting to describe it, I'm visualizing some like crowded hall full of ghosts.
Right? It
like,
seems
almost
like that.
Hey, anybody here we can talk to? Hey, what's up? Welcome to the party.
Now, again, it seems almost like a party haunt, much like the ghost at the cemetery in Salem that you talked about and the ghost at the Union Cemetery.
More curious.
Right, and wanting to interact rather than scary.
The curious ghosts.
She says she even felt them tug on her jacket more than once, and no one was close enough to her to do that, and everyone was enthralled with the guide. So it was not one of her friends, but she kept feeling someone tug on her jacket. One of her friends then turned to her and asked if she had tugged on the friend's jacket. So one of Sparkle's Witch's friends said, hey, did you tug on my jacket?
Remember when I talked about the Ashmore Estates, there are children ghosts there because they took in children that were orphans and such.
And weren't they on the lower floors?
Yep. So they actually were probably encountering some of these children ghosts.
She continued to see shadow people. And when the owner spoke, She said she saw a very tall shadow figure with a top hat, like a big top hat, looming behind the owner. And she said the owner himself was a very tall man, so the shadow itself had to be at least 6'7" to 6'8" tall.
Damn.
She said her hands started to tremble a bit as she could feel the rage coming off of this shadow. She said once the owner left the building, the shadow left too, and she didn't see it again. So they started the tour at the lower level, and she kind of tailed behind, eating her candy, Chelle. And she kept hearing giggles and small shadows out of the corner of her eye, and she kept feeling tugs on her clothing. She's dropped some Smarties for the ghost and caught up to the group.
Hell yeah, give an offering.
And she believes that the ghost that was kind of giggling and playing with her was Elva. And some of her other friends had experiences with her then as well.
Oh, the little girl that got burned.
Exactly. So you were exactly right when you said you felt that it was the children's spirits. That's what she felt as well. And she said the tour wasn't very long, so they didn't get to explore very much. She did have another experience near the boiler room. She was going to follow the rest of the group down, but again, she was the very last one to go down. And right before she went down, even though she was the last one in the group, she felt a hand on her right shoulder and heard a voice say, "I wouldn't go down there if I were you."
I got the chills from that. When you're a witch and a ghost says that, you turn your ass around, okay? You let
Exactly.
you let your friends go, and you're like, yeah, no, I gotta go. See ya.
The one time I was going up the staircase in my father's house and I reached the corner where that man had hung and I heard a voice say, "Yes." I immediately said, "Nope," and turned around and went right back out of the house because that's what you do.
Okay, did Sparkle Witch listen to the ghost or did she keep going?
No, Sparkle Witch is smart. She's our people. She
She kept going, didn't she?
She said, "Okay, I'm staying here," and did not go down. A few minutes later, one of her friends from the group screamed, "Oh, hell no, I just saw a face," and ran back to where Sparkle's Witch was standing, pale and spooked.
Fuck around and find out.
She heard that same voice say, "Told you." The rest of the tour, she says she felt like she was being watched, most likely because we were.
Yeah.
So she ends her lovely email by saying, "So you both definitely should do an overnight stay if you're in the area. Please do not hesitate to reach out if you would like a Central Illinois witch to join you. I'd love to go back with a few actual fellow witches. And if you need good food stay recommendations, reach out. We love a good hostess." And she's going to point us in the direction of the best local snackies, Chelle. Does she know you?
Snacks. I love snacks so much. I really
Does
do.
she know us or what?
Now, Sparkle Witch. Okay. Just on a personal level between you and me. Layla and I, if we can get our asses out to Illinois, the three of us, bring some friends because we're going.
We are so
we're
going.
Down. We're down.
Getting orb photos, EVPs, shadow people, all of it. We're doing it all. We might even bring a Ouija board and fuck around and find out.
I just would need to find enough time off of my day job to get my ass to Illinois. But if I can pull that off, Layla and I are down for that.
Please send your donations to our Patreon that does not yet exist.
Yeah, we need to start like a Patreon. Send Layla and Chelle on ghost hunts. You know, there's a lot of places in Illinois. I feel like that whole freaking state's haunted.
Yeah, we're scared of that whole state. So I would love to go visit, but we're scared of you guys.
I'm in Massachusetts now. We were both in New York. They're pretty haunted places. I ain't scared of New York and Massachusetts. I'm frightened of Illinois.
Illinois, yeah. Who would have thought? So far, that's my most scary state, I'd have to say.
It definitely is the top scary states.
But this week, we're celebrating. It was just Fat Tuesday. Mardi Gras is in full swing down in Louisiana, and especially in New Orleans.
It is. And, you know, I love the parades. I love watching the people on their porches throw the beads. Okay, and the boobies, not gonna lie.
Who doesn't love all of it? It's like a celebration of life. It's one last wild fling before everybody gets locked down for Lent.
I like that. Lockdown for Lent. Dun, dun, dun.
Well, kind of seems like that from all the Christians I know.
Just to kind of dive right in here, because, you know, this is probably going to be one of those longer episodes, folks.
Yeah.
How could we pick a place We couldn't even both pick a place. The whole city's haunted.
The
How
whole
can you,
place is haunted.
like every single inch of that city has got vibe.
Like some tour guides have said, everything is built on bodies. The whole
Yeah.
place is a swampland and they buried people everywhere. And when they needed to use land that was dry enough to build on, sometimes it was cemetery land. He says, my house has got bodies underneath it. The Walmart has bodies underneath it. This street has bodies underneath it. You know, the whole place is just haunted from top to bottom.
And I don't think that really the general population realized that until after Hurricane Katrina, when some of that devastation happened and those bodies resurfaced.
That's true.
But I think the biggest thing people don't realize about New Orleans is exactly what you said. It is literally built on bodies. And how many times have we talked about place association?
Exactly. Something happens in that land or something happened to those people and that energy stays there.
So I got this place. This is another place that I think would be so cool to visit. I looked into the Sultans Palace.
Ooh.
I think part of the reason was it sounded very royal to me. The Sultan's Palace.
So much does in New Orleans. I love it. It's so extravagant in so many ways.
And you know, this might sound like one of the many hot spots in New Orleans. I wouldn't say it is so now, but in the 19th century, it kind of was a hot spot. Not necessarily a club or a bar per se, but it was home to a Turk who traveled the world and spent a whole lot of his life partying like a rock star.
Sounds like fun. Yeah.
Right? Like this guy, it was normal for him to have all night parties. And this was, you know, long before New Orleans was kind of considered one of the best party cities in the world. But this guy would have like these all night shindigs and just literally party like a rock star.
Well, somebody has to be like the first partier of the party city.
Right. But there was some problems there, as you can imagine.
Oh, no.
They say that out of all of the haunted places in the Big Easy, I love that they call New Orleans the Big Easy. And we'll have to touch on why that is in a few minutes. But they say out of all the haunted places in the Big Easy, this just might be one of the most haunted of them all.
The most haunted, you say?
You know, it's like world famous roast beef in Massachusetts. You're all world famous here, people.
Does it? I think we ascertained last episode that does it have a gates to hell?
It does not.
Oh, no. Bad. Okay, strike one. Does it have a cryptid or a demon?
No.
Oh, no. Strike two. Oh, goodness, Chelle. What does it have to be the claim to the most haunted? It meets neither of our criteria.
Mass murder.
Okay, that helps.
So the Sultan's Palace was originally known as the Gardet-Lepret House. I hope I'm saying that right.
I have no clue. I speak zero French.
And it was owned by a wealthy businessman named Jean-Baptiste Lepret, who was of Creole descent. So his business had fallen on hard times and he had to sell the home in order to keep his personal finances in order.
That's sad.
He ended up selling it to a mysterious traveler. Again, love mysterious travelers.
I myself aspire to be a mysterious traveler.
Exactly. So he ended up selling it to a mysterious traveler who had come over from Turkey in search of living the good life in the USA.
Don't we all?
And this guy's name was Suleiman.
I love that.
It was Suleiman who claimed to be a prince from a Turkish royal family.
Well, shit, back then I'd claim to be a fucking princess. Why not? Who's going to tell me no?
But the real deal is that, yes, he was a prince from a Turkish royal family, but he was the brother of a sultan who had banished him from the kingdom and stripped any official title that would tie him to the royal family. So,
like Harry,
he was a prince, but his family was like, deuces. You're not going to say you're a prince because you're pissing us off. Because of the Civil War raging at the time and the bad economy, because you got to figure this is mid-1800s. So the Civil War is raging, economy's crap. So Mr. Lepret was at the point of desperation where he pretty much just had to sell it to anybody who would make an offer because he was that desperate. So Lepret ended up selling the home to Suleiman. Lepret ended up leaving town. Suleiman was settled in and ready to bring his party to the town because this was in an area called the French Quarter. I'm sure everybody's heard the French Quarter in New Orleans, but this home, this place, was in that French Quarter area. So this guy just all of a sudden wanted to bring these parties, and he started having like servants come in. He really kind of created a royal life, so to say, in there.
Okay. So, like, recreated that lavish royal lifestyle.
Right. And because, even though he was basically told, you can't say that you're the prince in Turkey, but we'll give you a bunch of money and send you off. So he
Okay.
loaded. He had many artifacts and treasures that were worth a fortune. And because he was so rich, he was able to captivate the attention of the locals who wanted to know this mysterious party guy living inside the home that once belonged to a struggling businessman. So
Okay.
those who were, listen to this, I need to do this. Those who were allowed to set foot on the steps were only allowed to leave gifts and other riches for Suleiman himself.
Wow. Set up for like people to just leave you offerings. How do you get that gig?
And check this out. This is another thing. So the house is situated at 716 Dauphin, and that's where the parties were ongoing. From the outside, you could smell the scent of opium filling the air. And there were daily deliveries of gold on the doorstep, and that was totally commonplace.
Wow.
Like, it sounds like you had like an opium den going on in there.
Well, you think? Maybe.
On a night like every other at the Sultans Palace, because that's what they called it, he had another one of his parties. And the weather outside was pretty bad. There was a nasty storm battering the city. So a lot of the folks in New Orleans were, trying to be inside, making the best of it. There was a local man. They partied all night long, had a great night. The following morning, a local man was passing through the French Quarter, and he noticed, now there was no one, because of the storm. Again, everybody was kind of staying inside in the city. There wasn't a lot of traffic not traffic. It's not like they had cars, but there wasn't a lot of hustle and bustle going on outside. Everybody was in for the night. So nobody really noticed anything weird. So following morning, local man passing through the French Quarter area noticed a trail of blood coming from the Sultan's Palace.
Oh no. That does not bode well.
He notified the police. So the police go to the Sultan's Palace. All of the revelers from the party were dead.
No.
Many of them were slashed to death by what appeared to be bladed weapons.
Oh, wow. Nasty. Hey, this is giving me Manson vibes.
The so-called Sultan was nowhere to be found.
Uh-oh. Suspect number one.
No, legend says that the Sultan might have been kidnapped and buried somewhere alive.
Oh, no. That's terrible. Why? Did he make a bad business deal or something?
Well, you got to figure, the guy has been...
Opium, right.
Yeah. I mean, a drug lord, ultimately.
Good point. Good point.
So no suspects, no witnesses come forward, a lot of conspiracy theories. Now, you got to remember in New Orleans, right on the water, there were some conspiracies that pirates had landed, discovered the Sultan's Palace, and plundered it.
I suppose that's also possible. Pirate activity was pretty high.
Took all the riches out of the house. Yep. And basically, they took all of the riches and gold and, leave no witnesses. Other rumors say that Suleiman's brother, the real Sultan, may have enlisted soldiers to assassinate him for being such a disappointment to his family.
Damn.
So there is the thought that maybe someone was sent from Turkey to kill him. But yeah, that party came to an abrupt and bloody end on a wild and stormy night. Suleiman's body never found.
Never found.
Never found.
I suppose he could have killed everyone in some sort of rampage and then just took off, right?
Right, because, again, like we talked about in many other stories, you could just disappear. Who the hell's going to know?
Yeah, he changed his name and moved 2 towns over.
Now, as you can imagine, over the years, because it's probably been, 150 years, 175 years, the home's undergone some renovations and changes in ownership, but it has long been recorded hauntings being a regular occurrence there.
I bet. mysterious mass murder.
Yeah. See, but that's the weird thing. Like, there's so many theories and they just don't know. This is like a cross between haunting and like true crime, actually.
It really seems it, yeah.
They see sightings of man dressed in Middle Eastern garments appearing on the walls. So that kind of makes it seem like they're seeing the ghost of the Suleiman being in the Middle Eastern garments. They hear phantom noises like screaming and shrieking. On some occasions, people have heard sounds that sound like body parts hitting the floor.
Oh, damn. Oh, that sounds awful.
Local residents report hearing chimes going off and smelling different incenses that might have been burning. Because as you can imagine, if this guy was a Turkish prince, they were very deep into incense, aromatic things.
Well, yeah, and if they're smoking opium, like you and I both know, smoke a lot of pot, burn a lot of incense.
Right? Smoke a lot of opium, burn a lot of incense.
Maybe.
They've seen a man with dark colored hair peering out the windows as he's looking towards the French Quarter area, only to disappear later. They actually, now it is private condos. I want to buy a condo in this place. It has gone back and forth between being a private residence. At one point, it was like a boarding, not really a hotel of sorts, but more like a boarding house. At one point, it was owned by the New Orleans Academy of Art. Most residents recall seeing the sight of a dark figure moving around. When people frantically turn lights on, the dark figure disappears. They cannot find, it's not like there's someone there doing it. This place is not open to the public for ghost hunting, by the way.
Bummer. You'd probably have to know someone that lived there.
Yeah, private condos. So this isn't a place that you can show up. But basically, it's like people will go to bed at night and they'll fall asleep to what sounds like partying. And they'll be woken up to screaming and like these thumps. Like I said, like body parts hitting the ground.
That's not funny.
In my mind, all I'm thinking, remember, the Turkish back then, the Turks sometimes would have those big, long, kind of like half moon shaped swords.
Yeah, like a scimitar.
That's what it's called. All I can think of is someone just going through this party, hacking people with one of those, and like an arm hits the floor, a leg hits the floor, someone's head gets chopped off and hits the floor. Yeah, because that's what a lot of the sounds that people are hearing is again like body parts thumping on the ground.
Ugh.
There has been some residents that have awoke in the middle of the night and they say that their nostrils are just filled with the scent of blood, but they have not had bloody noses. There's no blood on their pillows. They're not bleeding from anywhere, but they just got this overwhelming smell of blood.
Oh, that's terrible. That's a nasty way to wake up.
I think it's a place I want to live.
Well, just burn a lot of incense.
But they do think that the Sultan is still there roaming the halls. Some people say that they think when he's looking out the window that he's actually looking for his killers.
Ooh, maybe. Well, he wouldn't be the first person who was killed away from a place that they loved, that haunts the place where they lived, not where they died.
Right. But I also heard one little rumor that stated that there was a possibility that all of the bodies were buried in the basement because they didn't have anywhere else to put them.
Maybe Suleiman was just chopped up into so many small parts that they just didn't know he was there, mixed in with the other ones.
But my curiosity is the blood dripping down the street. Was somebody's body dragged out? Did one of the killers get hurt and bled as they fled? Like, where'd this blood smear come from? Somebody walked away from that massacre.
I imagine that the person who did it, or people who did it, would be so covered in blood. I mean, if you're hacking off body parts, you're going to be pretty bloody.
Although I'm thinking 1800s and you've pissed off some Turkish royalty, they could have needed to like chop off his head. And like the only way the brother in Turkey would have believed that they carried out their mission was bring me my brother's head.
Well, that would certainly leave a trail of blood down. I think that's probably the most plausible. I think
you know what I'm saying?
Right
bring me his head kind of thing.
I think you hit that theory on the head.
Ha ha! No pun intended. So the Sultans Palace, it's got a bloody history, but unfortunately, do not go there. Private residence, no go.
But if you do live there, email us at thestonedwitcheshour@gmail.com and tell us of your experiences. We'd love to hear them.
So I think it's a very cool location. Not a lot of present day stories due to the fact that it's private residence.
Whew. I don't know actually if I'd want to go to this one because it sounds like those are gross ghost stories. That sounds terrifying and disgusting.
It's definitely mass murdery.
Yeah, no, this one I'm staying home. You can go if we find someone who lives there. This one sounds too gross for me. It's a little too much Manson-esque. I don't like it.
I think the turnoff for me on this particular one actually is I don't want to wake up to the smell of blood. What the hell?
No. The sound of body parts hitting the floor. What does that even sound like? How would you even know that that's what you were hearing?
Why would you?
Gross.
Who sits there? You know what? That sounds like body parts hitting the ground. Okay, what's your frame of reference? Just saying.
Thank you. Exactly. We need to know. We would really no, actually I don't want to know. Never mind. On second thought, I don't want to know how they knew that.
This is, I think, a prevalent thing with all of some of the ghosty stuff down in New Orleans. It was a party city. It was on the water. So there was maritime trade and the potential for pirates.
The potential? You mean literal pirates?
Literal
My
pirates.
favorite, Jean Lafitte, even has a bar there. So, yeah, literal pirates. I mean, the place was hopping. There was a lot going on. And the cemetery that I'm talking about today is St. Louis Cemetery number 1, which is the oldest cemetery in New Orleans, in Louisiana, I believe.
What does that date back to? Out of curiosity.
Was established by Spanish royal decree on August 14th, 1789. And it's the oldest cemetery that can be visited.
Oh, wow. No, wait, the oldest cemetery that can be visited, does that mean there's an older one that can't be visited?
I think that's referring to the possibility of older familial plots.
Oh, okay. I gotcha.
But the St. Louis Cemetery is at 425 Basin Street, and it is closed to the public. Families are allowed to go there, and they have special passes in order to get in at any time if you have family buried there.
Is that just because it's so old and they want to keep it kind of preserved for the
Yeah, when
family?
I was there, I think it was 2014, when I was there prior to 2015 when they closed the cemetery, and you could just walk through and look at it. But as of 2015, they closed it to regular visitors. You can only go in if you pay for an approved tour.
Oh, wow.
I mean, that's not a bad thing. The tour guides there are usually fantastic. They have a wealth of information. So this cemetery is beautiful. It has the wrought iron gate. I don't know if you're familiar with the way they bury people in Louisiana.
No.
Basically, most people are familiar with, you dig a hole 6 feet down and you put your coffin in, right?
Right?
Well, Louisiana is all swampland. When they tried to bury coffins in the swamp, they would rise right back up to the surface.
That's creepy.
Yeah. They tried things like putting stones on top of them, drilling holes in the coffin, but as soon as the water level would rise, they'd come right back up out of the ground. What they would basically do is they would build up some of the more sturdy swampland with brick, tons and tons of brick and stone and seashells, I guess. And then on top of that, they built mausoleums, big, tall, square, most times big, tall, square little cemetery buildings that they would put a person's coffin in. Usually there was room for 1 to 3 of them, depending on how wealthy your family was. After 1 or 2 years, they would take the coffin out, transfer the remains into a bag that would then go back into the crypt at the back, and they would destroy the coffin. And that way there was room for the next family member who passed away to get into the crypt.
That's kind of creepy, just saying.
Yeah, and so these crypts can hold, this cemetery holds well over 100,000 bodies because of
Holy
this.
shit! How big is this?
It's not very big. It's not very big at all.
Are they just like stacked on top of each other?
They are stacked up on top of each other. And again, it's big enough. It's like a little crypt, a little tiny building that's big enough for a casket to go into, or big enough for 3 caskets to go into stacked on top of each other. Think of like a pizza oven.
Oh, God.
So if there wasn't room, like if the year or 2 years had not passed and they couldn't take the body out and then reinter it in a bag, they had these like waiting ovens in the walls.
Bag? Wait. In a bag?
Yes, they take the coffin with the body out after the 2 years is up, transfer the remains to a bag, and then that bag is put back into the crypt
Without the coffin?
without the coffin, and the coffin is then destroyed.
I was going to say, what? You passing that on? You reusing that?
I don't think so.
What a waste.
So they're kind of falling apart. Most of them are brick, and then they're covered over in limestone. And a lot of the older ones, again, this is an over 300-year-old
All the
cemetery.
limestones come off.
Not on all of them. This is still a modern day cemetery. People are still buried here. So you'll see them in various states of disrepair, but like this one here, you can see is fresh and has nice limestone on it. But some of them are crumbling into disrepair. There's beautiful statues. And not only is this cemetery home to ghosts and some famous residents of New Orleans, it's also home to the future grave of a very famous person.
I love this person. This has been my celebrity crush since I was a teenager, so do tell.
This cemetery is home to the future grave of none other than Nicolas Cage, who absolutely loves New Orleans.
Because who buys themselves a crypt long before their death other than Nicolas Cage?
His is actually a pyramid. It's a big white pyramid in the middle of this cemetery. And it's so weird. It's the only pyramid one there. The rest of them are more rectangular or square shaped, and it's definitely well kept up. And I believe in the early 2000s, he was making a visit to check on his pyramid future crypt, and it was covered in lipstick kisses, and he didn't like the way that it looked. And so he had them install this plaque on the front of it under the, I forget what it is in Latin, but it translates to from all to one. And underneath that, there's a little plaque put for people to kiss specifically. So it keeps his pyramid looking nice.
So you can still buy a plot here, but you can't visit, or he got a plot before it closed to the public? Like, can you just still get buried here?
You can still get buried there. It does cost quite a bit. And I don't know if there's any open plots or if you would have to buy space in someone's crypt who would sell it to you. I'm not exactly sure how that would work. But I do know that there are still families who, as recently as last year, have had people buried there.
Wow. Wow.
Some of the more famous residents, like I said, the future resident is Nicolas Cage. But currently, the most famous resident, in my opinion, there is Marie Laveau, the Voodoo Queen of New Orleans.
We love voodoo.
She has a crypt there along with her family, her husband, and her children. Now, if you go on a tour, you will go to see one of two Marie Laveau graves.
One of two. You only got one body.
Well, there's some controversy over whether she was actually buried in her family crypt. She was. So there really is just one official grave. But I guess some unscrupulous tour guides, when the line to go see Marie Laveau's grave would get too long, would randomly pick just this one other grave and tell people that that was Marie Laveau's grave. Now, something that people like to do on Marie Laveau's grave is they go to her because she was well known for granting wishes and doing spells and doing gree-gree bags for people in the community. They think that even after death, she'll still continue to help people out. And so what they do is they go to her grave and they mark 3 X's or 3 crosses on the grave and ask her for a wish. Legend says you mark the 3 X's, touch the grave, and then yell your wish and turn around 3 times, and Marie Laveau will grant you your wish. And if she does, you have to return back to her grave within a year, circle your X's, and leave her an offering, or she'll take it back.
Wow. I'd feel compelled to do that. I'd be afraid not to.
You would be right to be afraid not to, because in her time, she was a very well-known hoodoo root worker practitioner. She was born somewhere around 1801. Nobody knows for sure. Records weren't very well kept at that time. And because she was a mixed race woman, records were even less easy to come by.
Right.
Now, her mother was a mixed race woman who had been born a slave, but her father was a wealthy mixed race son of a landowner and a slave who was like a banker. He traded properties. And I don't believe that her parents ever married, but she was known to be very beautiful. And her younger life was pretty uneventful. She had a first marriage. He disappeared. And later she married a wealthy Frenchman. And that's about when her legend started. She kind of started out as a hairdresser. This actually helped her rise to power because she would do the hair of all the servants of the wealthy people and also the hair of some of the wealthy ladies in the area. And so she heard all the gossip. She knew everything that was going on in New Orleans. Whether you were super rich or super poor, Marie Laveau knew. And she was also known for being very kind. She was actually a Catholic and practiced the Catholic faith, which in that area does very much get incorporated into voodoo and hoodoo practices. And so she did very strongly believe in the Catholic practices of giving to the poor, helping the sick. And she did that quite a bit. And one of the things she would do is people would come to her for spells. They'd come to her for her to, hex someone or to practice this voodoo magic for their benefit. And because of this, she grew to be extremely wealthy. Now, rumor has it, one of the most famous, I don't know if hex, one of the most famous rituals that she did, at one time there was a gentleman whose son had kind of gotten involved in a mess with the law. I believe he killed someone. Now, this wealthy gentleman wanted his son to get off on all of the charges. And he was desperate enough that he went to Marie Laveau for help and asked her to use her voodoo magic to help his son get found innocent of these charges. Very often, voodoo magic requires that you do something that causes pain. And doing that pain, having that suffering, will bring the spirits to you and show them that you mean business, that you can handle this, and that they should grant your request. And she did this by using something called guinea peppers. And they would get very, very hot guinea peppers. And I believe they even heated them up in the fire to make them burning red hot. And she would then put them in her mouth and hold these burning hot peppers in her mouth while she recited prayers and asked the spirits and the ancestors to intervene on the behalf of this gentleman. The reason she did this is because he said if she could get his son acquitted of these charges, he'd give her a house.
Oh, wow.
So she endured this for several days. And at the end of this time of pleading with the ancestors, she took those guinea peppers and brought them to the judge who was presiding over the case. And she placed them in his courthouse under his seat. So these powerful peppers that have been, covered in the magic, she put them under his seat. And at the very next hearing, the son was acquitted. And she, of course, got her house.
Nice.
Some people say that it's very likely when she went to the judge's house, she went there and she said, "Hey, I've talked to all the servants in your house and your wife.
I know you're dirt." Yeah.
I know what you get up to. Let this boy go or I talk. Oh, and give me money."
Right.
So that's entirely possible. She wielded.
I like the pepper story better.
It's entirely likely that it was a combination of both. She was a very powerful priestess and a very powerful woman in her own right. She had property. She had money. She was feared throughout town. She was beautiful.
She not only had money and property, she had secrets.
And she had the secrets, exactly. And she had hoodoo on her side.
I know we've already talked about our weed portion here. But as you tell your story and you're puffing off your little bong, that thing is gorgeous. It's beautiful, by the way.
Very cute. I love it. It's got a nice little spiral cooling action.
I like the color.
Thank you.
Very cute. But anyway, continue on.
So Marie Laveau is one of the people at the cemetery. You can go to her grave. One of the reasons it's closed is because people do vandalize her grave. Putting the X's.
Her specifically?
Her specifically. But you will find these 3 X's all over, including the possible second grave or probably false second grave of Marie Laveau is covered in the X's and different offerings left there, different sayings. And multiple times they have had to take her actual crypt and cover it over or repaint it or relime it. And some assholes have even gone so far as to use keys or knives to gouge X's into the tomb. And I'm pretty darn sure that's going to get you some bad karma.
Oh, shit.
Bad mojo's coming your way, more than likely, because she is well known for granting these wishes. Her power extends even after death. And if you have the chance to go to her shop, her original shop in New Orleans, you can feel that energy there. It's definitely
still open.
It is still open. There's places like that all over, these old places in New Orleans. Every inch of that place is covered in history and ghosts and paranormal activity.
Now, when you were in New Orleans, did you just kind of feel that vibe everywhere?
Yes, and some places more than others, including the burlesque dancer ghost I saw at a strip club. But that's in a previous episode. But yeah, you can definitely feel it everywhere, including at this cemetery. People do often see ghosts here. Some people say that they will see the distinctive figure of Marie Laveau walking around in her dress with her distinctive red turban on her
I
head.
believe it.
Some people say that she scratches them. And I wonder why, because she was known to be very kind and very nice in her lifetime. So I'm
Probably
not
those
sure.
probably those are the people that were trying to desecrate her grave,
Very
TBA.
well could be. Now, there's a couple other spirits there of people that are buried there. One of them is a gentleman named Henry Vignes. He was a sailor, kind of wealthy, and he had a vault, a plot of land in this cemetery, which, people have had for generations. One time when he was leaving to go on a sailing voyage, he had a fear, a premonition that he wasn't going to make it back. So he took all of his paperwork, including all of his titles of property and everything, and he handed them over to either a trusted friend or his landlord. The stories differ,
Maybe his landlord was a trusted friend
possibly. And so he gave all this paperwork over to this trusted friend and said, hold on to this for me in case I don't come back. And then he went off to sea.
and didn't come back.
Well, he did make it back.
Oh,
He came back only to find out that that trusted friend had sold all of his property and refused to make good on it. So Henry Vignes died a pauper and was buried in an unmarked pauper's grave in the same cemetery where his family has a plot. So people say that they will see him walking around the cemetery. He's very tall and he has distinctive blue eyes, dressed in a white shirt. So he looks like a gorgeous sailor with blue eyes walking around the cemetery. But he'll often ask people if they
trying to find his family's plot.
He'll come up to people and ask if they know directions to the Vignes plot because he's still trying to find his way back there. There's another ghost that's also a very solid apparition, and this one is called Alphonse. And they're not sure how he died, but he also appears very much alive to people who have seen him. He approaches people, he'll shake their hand and ask for help getting home. And no matter what they say, he starts crying and then disappears. And people say that they think something may have happened with this other family that has plots there called the Pineid family. Because if he's near that vault and people go close to the vault, he tells them to stay away from it, that it's dangerous before disappearing. But that's the only clue to his identity.
But nobody knows anything about that family or that plot.
No, many people have seen him and described the same situation and that he's afraid of the Pineid family, but no other information has been able to be found about him.
So when this really originally started, anybody from any class could be buried there, whether you were rich or poor or black or white or whatever.
Yes, there's family plots, there's cemetery plots all over New Orleans. And again, because they had to be buried in such a unique fashion, people would keep these crypts in their family and just everyone would be buried there. So it's very common for people to have kept these crypts. And yeah, anybody could have one, just like in a cemetery in, say, upstate New York. You could just go and if you could buy one, you could have one. But I guess there was also like paupers plots there at one time as well.
Gotcha.
Although the land is worth a little too much for something like that now.
Just ask Nick Cage. I know we talked about this in a previous episode, but I want to remind people that a good fun Nick Cage fact is that at one point for like 3 or 4 years, I believe it was, he owned the LaLaurie mansion.
That is very true. And much like other people who have owned the LaLaurie mansion, he didn't own it for long.
But we talk about that in our LaLaurie mansion episode.
Yes, indeed we do. Now, one other interesting fact about Marie Laveau, of which there are hundreds, and we're not going to get into in this episode, but she used to walk around town. She was a very commanding figure. She had lots of wealth, lots of power, and everyone loved her. But one of the interesting things is she would walk around town with a snake draped around her neck, and its name was Le Bon Zombie.
That's a little twisted.
How fun is that? How fun is that, though?
Did you ever find any stories about her that were more related to her voodoo and magic by chance?
Oh, lots. I mean, there's tons. I
I mean,
know that
I know we're on the ghost story portion, but since we were talking about her, I didn't know if there was any fun facts about her witchy side.
there is so much. She did not grow up learning voodoo or hoodoo. She was actually trained by a gentleman known as the Voodoo King of New Orleans called Dr. John. And
Dr. John.
Dr. John. Now, he was quite the character himself. And again, we don't have time to get into all of it, but he is the one who taught Marie Laveau her root working, her hoodoo magic. And he was also well known for his gree bags. And a gree bag is basically a magical bag that you put different items in order to affect change, in order to cast a spell. Very often you'll find
What in
gree
modern
bags.
day we just call a spell bag.
A spell bag. Yes, if you are not a practitioner of the voodoo, belief system, then it's not a gree bag for you. But usually for love or luck or, to punish your enemies, to move, whatever spell or charm you want to put into that gree bag. But she was well known for her charms and well known for her magic working really, really well. Even though some people say that she was just a good Catholic and she had a lot of secrets, you cannot deny how powerful her magic was, her fortune telling. She was well known throughout the city and the state for her tarot reading, for her magic potions. Again, if you came to her and asked her to intervene with the ancestors and with the spirits on your behalf, it worked. It just worked every single time. She was that powerful.
It just was. It was one of those. It's like going to the doctor. You go to the doctor, you get it fixed. It just is. You go to her,
Right.
you get your voodoo done. It just is.
Yep. Now, there's a lot of stories because people, Christians and, your average Karen white lady who didn't like that this woman of color had all of this power and had all of this money and was practicing black magic. People got kind of riled up about that. And so there's a lot of stories about.
Those are the same people that would go to her for their fertility rituals and to make sure that their man either loved them or was not cheating on them. So, like, okay, hypocrites. Continue.
Exactly. And then, bitch at their friends over tea. So,
Right.
yeah.
Give me a love spell and then I'm going to persecute you.
Yeah, exactly. Although most things point to that she was raised Catholic, it's possible that through her maternal grandmother, she was raised with a mix of Catholicism and voodoo. But that's so common in that area, it's kind of hard to tell. But wherever she got it from, she definitely had the power. She had a lot of followers, and they would go to Congo Square. She lived on St. Anne with her husband, and Congo Square is just a short walk from her house. And because people of color were not allowed to, whether you were black, Creole, mulatto, mixed race, whatever, they did not allow those people into white churches. So she would hold services at Congo Square. And those were, sometimes people would say those were, they called them orgies, but it very well could have just been Catholic mixed with voodoo services that outside people didn't understand or exaggerated what they were seeing.
Kind of like how they, language wise and tradition wise, they kind of merged that French Creole. They kind of merged Catholicism and voodoo, it sounds like.
Right. And if she's there doing a hoodoo ritual where she's conjuring the great serpent spirit and she's holding her snake up, and she's being filled with Loa and wearing like all her voodoo regalia.
I could see how that would look a little weird to a Catholic.
Yeah, a Catholic might think that was a little outside of their experience.
Definitely.
Just a little, just a little. So, but she led a lot of those different rites. She led a lot of seasonal rites.
She was definitely a priestess of her people, aside
Very much
from the
so.
other stuff.
Exactly. Now, she did have a daughter who was also named Marie Laveau and who some people say looked exactly like her. And
now, did she do the same things? Is there some crossover that maybe some stories are about the mom or the daughter that maybe are really about two different people?
You nailed that perfectly. Yes. So because her daughter looked so much like her, some people thought they were the same person. And so this kind of perpetuated some of the stories that she was kind of an evil soul-sucking witch because she stayed young and beautiful forever. Because here's Marie Laveau, looks 20 years old and she should be 60, so that kind of perpetuated that. But her daughter also followed in her voodoo footsteps and also performed rituals and made gree bags for people. Now, it's rumored that her daughter was not as powerful and also was not as benevolent. She, much like your story of the Sultan, she was known for throwing elaborate orgy like drug parties at her house. And she did eventually get in trouble for those. So her being around did kind of perpetuate some of the stories because she was a little bit, she was less kind to people. She was less good at the magic and she was more known for the wild partying. So the fact that her daughter had the same name and looked just like her kind of perpetuated some of the negative stereotypes that are associated with her.
Well, and that's why I'm wondering if maybe some of the more negative stories could be a cross between her and her daughter, where they're really about two people and not just one.
Very likely. I think a big hefty dose of it is prejudice and misunderstanding. You know, they didn't know what these rituals were. So you see a half-naked woman with a snake dancing around a fire, they don't get it. And so to that, whatever you don't understand is evil.
Right.
So I think it's a kind of a combination of both, a slightly wild daughter who has your name and face, and also just the prejudices of the time. But yeah, great character, very interesting. And the energy in that cemetery, even around the fake Marie Laveau grave, so many people have put their wishes and their energy and made those marks and brought their offerings to that
She now
grave.
shows up at that one too.
It's a lodestone as well. There is energy in that grave. There's no way that for hundreds of years, people putting all that type of energy into something, Marie Laveau's not there, but people themselves have made that shrine powerful, or maybe they were drawn to that particular crypt because it already had some type of energy there. Who knows who's buried there that might be granting these wishes? It's definitely an interesting spot. So I would check out all of it. The whole cemetery is gorgeous.
But like you said, you have to go through a paid tour at this point to be able to visit it.
You do. You have to go through a tour unless you happen to be a family member who has a plot there. But, you know, they're not that expensive. And the tour guides are, you know, they're typically really good and they have a lot of information and background facts. You do get to walk around and take pictures and video. You don't get to walk around freely, but you get a great guide. And I don't think that's a bad trade-off.
Now, one question I just want to ask that I'm sure maybe at least one of our listeners is asking, one of our 5 listeners. You called this the cemetery number 1.
Yes.
Are you implying that there's a St. Louis cemetery number 2?
I'm not implying, I'm outright stating.
So there's one that's called number 1 and one that's called number 2?
Oh, there's more than that.
They couldn't come up with like better names.
Right. Yeah, there's cemetery number 1, cemetery number 2. Like cemetery number 2, let's see, that's in the French Quarter. That one was established in 1823. 2 is on 1 Claiborne Avenue. So yeah, there's quite a few of them. There's a lot of cemeteries in the area and there's different notable people buried in all of them. So you can go on different tours that'll hit all of them if you want to, or you can just check out 1 or 2.
Well, I think the first thing I want to check out if I ever make my way there is her original store.
Yes, I highly recommend it.
Have you been there? When you went there, did you go there?
Yes. Yeah, it's fantastic. The energy's
Am I going to spend a lot of money there?
Yes. Yes, you will. Bring your money.
Yeah.
But it's a great place for sure. And there's a lot of them. There's a lot of them along Bourbon Street. It's fantastic.
So it sounds like she was just quite the interesting character, aside from being buried in the cemetery.
She was the voodoo queen of New Orleans and proved it time and time again in many different ways.
Do people feel her anywhere other than the cemetery, like at her store or at her former home? Or is it really just the cemetery?
I did not look into her former home. I know they see her at the cemetery and they do often see her at her shop or walking on the streets. She, again, beautiful woman, dress, and a red turban is what people most usually describe seeing when they see an apparition of her. But walking near her shop in the cemetery are the ones that I found mostly. But I imagine that there's more other places as well.
One of these years, I want to go to Mardi Gras. I think it would just be super cool to just feel. You've been there, so you felt that vibe. I have not had the opportunity to feel that New Orleans vibe, and I want to.
I was not there during Mardi Gras, but I was in New Orleans and it's a wonderful time. I
I
recommend
would
going
imagine.
not during Mardi Gras. It's
I was going to say, I would imagine the vibe is like that, probably even more so not during Mardi Gras.
yeah, I'm not a people or a crowd person, so that type of party vibe, while a lot of fun, would tire me out pretty quickly. So I much more enjoy exploring when it's less
Quiet.
people. Yeah, and it's New Orleans, so it's not quiet. It's just not packed with people.
But I just think it's very nifty, and I would definitely like to experience that. Like, it sounds like with every step you take, there's like a ghost around every corner in that joint. And I would feel like, don't you feel like you're just like walking on people's graves everywhere
Yes,
you go?
very much so. You feel the weight of history there
Like,
in
I
a
would have some
big
guilt
way.
factor just walking around.
The place definitely feels very haunted. The history is there. It's beautiful. There's so much to see and feel. Like I said, I went to a strip club and saw a ghost, so you can pretty much go anywhere and see a spirit of some type.
I would just like to just roam the streets after dark and just see who's crawling around on the streets being all ghosty.
We should go. We would have so much fun, Shell.
We would. And you know, I'm sure I could find beads even if it isn't during Mardi Gras.
Oh, yeah, you definitely can. They're everywhere. So send your money to the non-existent Send Laylla and Chelle on a Ghostly USA tour.
You know, we don't have Patreon, so we'll figure it out.
Yay. But thank you all for listening. This has been episode 57 of the Stoned Witches Hour. We hope you had a ghostly good time, and join us next week on Wednesday at 4:20 a.m. for the Stoned Witches Hour.
And be respectful to ghosts, man, because if you respect the ghosties will respect you. Otherwise, you're screwed.
But other than that, stay high, stay happy. We'll see you next week.
Spook out.